So someone asked me about this budget yesterday. They said, Ryan, what do you think about the process so far? I said, well, the governor's budget is big on spending but small on details, right? Like that's it. Like we don't know where we're going with it.
By the way, do you know where the details are in this budget? Welcome back to By the Way, Did You Know? And in keeping with our budget theme over the next couple of weeks, to remind everybody, we are in the budget hearing season the last couple of weeks. And next week, we will be doing budget hearings with the governor's various secretaries and department heads to really pick apart the budget, get details, learn about what the budget's about. So, again, with me today, I have two other members of the House Appropriations Committee with me who have also been on the podcast before, Representative Mike Cabell and Representative Ryan Warner. Thanks, guys, for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so budget. Have we learned anything in the last 2 weeks?
That's the big question, right? And I'm going to say no. We've not learned what we need to know to start this budget process, right?
So, I'm a freshman, so I come into these budget hearings all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and excited to dig in, and especially this is the opportunity for the public to have some insight as to what's actually in this massive budget. And we've been asking questions of these secretaries and not getting much detail at all.
Yeah, I mean, we're halfway through the budget hearings. I think we have 12 total hearings, I believe. We're like at hearing 7. And secretary after secretary that comes is saying, well, we don't know what the proposal is, or we don't have the details. You're going to have to ask the governor's office. You're going to have to, the budget secretary, which, mind you, the budget secretary is the last hearing we have.
We have a lot of questions for him.
and maybe you guys can walk through, like, what is the hearing like? What are these budget hearings like? What's the process? We don't get much time. Explain how this works to folks that are listening.
Yeah, so with each department, the secretary of that department and their deputy secretaries, maybe other people that work with them that may be able to help answer some questions, come before the committee. Each committee member is given an allotment of 5 minutes to ask questions. So that's it, right? You get 5 minutes for an entire department. And within that 5 minutes, we're supposed to try to find out details about the governor's budget proposal. And to go back to your point earlier, finding out that we're not getting any details on any of the proposals, right? So, I mean, there's massive spending increases.
Yep.
There's all these different sources of new revenue, and there's no details on how it's actually going to happen. And so someone asked me about this budget yesterday. They said, Ryan, what do you think about the process so far? I said, well, the governor's budget is big on spending but small on details, right? Like that's it. Like we don't know where we're going with it. But back to the process, we're supposed to interrogate or question each one of these secretaries to try to get answers. What we've gotten so far is basically stonewalling and punting down the road.
Yeah, a lot of filibustering.
Yeah, right.
They talk. We have to, interrupt, and it's not to be rude, but we get 5 minutes, and Jordan Harris, the Democrat House Appropriations Chair, doesn't give us any leeway. I mean, we have got 5 minutes on the dot, and then we're done.
Right, and you said 5 minutes, Ryan. It's for each department. Sometimes it's 5 minutes for two departments.
Yeah, that's
For
right.
example,
Yeah.
we have DEP and DCNR in front of us, two massive departments in one hearing. So
$4 billion.
$4 billion.
Our budget.
And so we get 5 minutes with no follow-up, no second round, and it's really hard on us because we take this job seriously. We go in there with questioning, and a lot of times you have to set the question up, you have to set the table, and then they, of course, filibuster. They tell us how great our question is for 30 seconds, and then usually punt to Secretary Munson or just say, well, you'd have to ask the governor on that stuff. So it's been frustrating for me as a freshman and new to this stuff. I mean, I'm doing everything I can to try to dig in and learn, and it's been really difficult.
Brian, I mean, you've been through, I think, probably 6 budget rounds now, being on the appropriation. How is this different? Because this is my 5th year on the committee, and by far this year so much difference, lacks so much detail. What was your experience?
Yeah, so I would say that's the biggest difference, right? I mean, there were times throughout the years where we would struggle to try to get the details that we would want from certain departments, right, or for certain proposals from the governor. But in this case, it just seems like everybody is just throwing their hands up and like, we'll figure it out as we go. In fact, I mean, I basically got a secretary tell me that, well, you guys figure it out.
Yeah.
And my response to the secretary was, it's not my proposal, right? Like, this is your proposal. Like, I'm trying to find out information about your proposal. You tell me how you get to these numbers. So just to punt it back to us, it's
they've just been throwing big
yeah.
numbers out. That's
Out.
it. It looks
Yeah.
like the governor was just like, all right, the way we're gonna fix this is throw massive numbers at all of these line items, and we'll figure out the details later. But I mean, that's not how you build a budget in business. You know what I mean? Like, and it's really frustrating because we're trying to be responsible with the Commonwealth's money and doing everything we can to figure out where it's actually going, and there's no transparency whatsoever.
Yeah, so we've had labor and industry before us, we've had revenue before us, we've had health before us, and agriculture. And one of the biggest things that the governor is asking for in this budget is a tax on legalizing recreational weed. And those 4 departments I just mentioned all have purview over that, and not a single one of them wanted to talk about it.
Yep.
No, they
You had
again.
you had Secretary Redding saying it's a cash crop. That's great. Okay, but how are we rolling this out? And we're being told that really they don't even want any part of it.
Yeah.
So the governor's throwing around this, and that's a big chunk of money. It's not enough to backfill the $3.2 billion or whatever in additional spending, but it's a piece of revenue we got to figure out, and it doesn't seem like there's any plan for it to put it into. And I think the revenues it's coming January 1st of 2025. So It's time to figure it out now.
Yeah, and not to mention how you run. If you're going to legalize recreational weed, the massive undertaking that's going to be. I mean, I'm not a supporter of recreational marijuana, but like if you're going that way, don't you think you should have the parameters of this is how the program's going to be set up, this is how it's going to be sold, this is who's going to process it, this is who's going to. I mean, none of those details are there.
Well, especially when you're relying on that revenue to balance your budget, right? That's, to me, is the shocker. Like, you're spending our reserves, right? You're taking all our reserves, and then you're still relying on new revenue that you don't have plans for, right? That's the big shocker. Again, we look at the labor and industry hearing. When I asked the secretary about their proposal for minimum wage,
Zero.
no answers.
Yeah.
I mean, they're proposing a $15 minimum wage.
How'd you come up with that number?
Yeah,
No.
it wasn't. I wasn't going after a secretary. I just generally went up. What brings you to $15 an hour?
Right, it's an
Like,
arbitrary
what-
number to begin with, so
Yeah.
why not make
Yeah.
it like you
so
asked?
and I
Yeah.
was just trying to, and I just asked her, what's the consequences of going higher or lower than 15? And I didn't get an answer.
Well,
All
it's
I
just
got
like
was-
school. Show me the math, right?
y-
You can't just come up
yeah.
with a math problem. What's the math that went into that? And they
Yeah.
have no.
No,
And going back
nothing.
to the medical or the adult use cannabis stuff, it is controversial. So like we
Very
don't even
much
know
so.
so the only way you're gonna get members like any members in our caucus comfortable is to show, hey, how are we gonna keep this away from kids? How are we gonna? There's lots of questions to be answered, and they're just marking down the number at the end, and that's kind of been the theme of this entire budget.
Yeah, not a single secretary has provided details or comfortability to any member of this body about how that program is going to be rolled out.
Yeah.
Another big thing that the governor in his budget address was how we're dealing with higher ed, right? And we've had the PASHE system, which is our state-owned universities like Shippensburg, Millersville, Kutztown, those schools, and combining them with our community colleges. And we've had both the community colleges before us and the PASHE system before us, and neither of them seem to understand what this plan looks like. They're like, oh, there's a blueprint, right? There's a blueprint.
It doesn't seem like they had many. Not only do they not understand, but it doesn't even seem like they were part of the planning process really at this point either. So it's like so it's been, and I know we know the community colleges aren't thrilled about this idea, and we heard from them. That was kind of clear, but I mean it's just more of the same.
Yeah, and Representative Owlett, who's also on the committee, has a construction background. And he said usually a blueprint actually has details, and it actually says this is how you build the house, right?
It's not just a press release.
Yeah, it's not just a press release. So to call it a blueprint really isn't accurate either, because there are zero details other than, oh, we're going to make college, basically free
$1,000 a year
for a huge segment of the population, and we're going to combine all the schools, and it's just going to be great.
Yeah.
No details.
Good luck.
No details. So we have a big hearing coming up this afternoon. DEP, DCNR. What are you guys looking forward to in that hearing?
details. But I mean, that's one certainly that our caucus is really focused. Permitting issues like that. So we're well prepared for this one. Hopefully, we'll actually get some answers out of the secretaries. But again, it goes back to the problem of having two different departments, and we were told we have to focus on what's important to us first, and then hopefully we'll have some time. Maybe we'll get a second round of questioning. They said they might have done that yesterday, and it didn't happen. So maybe we pressed on this hearing and drag it out a little longer so we can actually get some details.
So Ryan, permitting reform is something last year the governor was saying he's going to be a champion of, and last year was the governor's first budget. He's kind of put all these grandiose plans out. This is our year now to go and say, okay, what progress has been made? And I don't think a lot of progress has been made on the permitting reform side.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at just DEP in general, I mean, what the governor is saying and what he's doing are becoming two different things now, right? We can look at school choice for one, and then we can also look at Reggie.
Yep.
Okay,
Right.
I mean, the governor campaigned on not wanting, saying I don't agree with it, right? And here he is now challenging the lawsuit that's going to end it, right? Appealing the lawsuit that the court said this is unconstitutional, can't do it. Governor said, oh yeah, we can.
Yeah,
and we're
and
going to stay in it, right?
Yeah, and Reggie, just so those know, it's basically an energy tax. It's a tax on energy through a carbon tax that will absolutely affect every single person that heats their home or purchases fuel in some way. It absolutely will increase rates, and it's something the governor has not been publicly supportive of, but has not killed Reggie.
Yeah, I mean it's still there, and to expand on the permitting issues that we have. I mean, I look at my own backyard, right? So just a couple of years ago, we lost $1.5 billion expansion from U.S. Steel, right? They were going to make that big of an expansion, and it got killed by permitting, by people purposely trying to delay the permitting process. And U.S. Steel moved it to Arkansas, right? We were just going to build a brand new state-of-the-art natural gas power plant, which is one of the cleanest fuel sources that we have, right? Mm-hmm. State-of-the-art, gone, killed it, another state. So, what the governor's doing, I would like to see, the proof is in the pudding. Show us what are you doing, right?
It's more the same. There's a lot of talk, a lot of plans, a lot of grandiose ideas, but not a lot of action. And that's kind of what we're seeing in these hearings, too.
Well, we're going to keep hammering it. The secretaries over the next couple of weeks. We have some big ones next week. We have education next week. We have Department of Human Services. Really, 2/3 of our budget is next week. Yep. So really, really big hearings next week. And we'll dive into that next week. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Hopefully we get some details here soon, but we'll be optimistic, but we'll see what happens. This has been, By the Way, Did You Know? Tune in for all of my podcasts at repecker.com/mypodcast.